So we've come across a cryptic reference in the Parshat here. Certainly, the word Yemei references us back to the creation story in that Vayher Vayivoker Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi. So the word Yom or Yemei, days of, focuses us back to the creation story. So that's the thing that draws us back to the rules of creation, and he specifically says that they will proceed, they will go forward from here, just like Yemei, just like Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, and that's the only way that I can find to reconcile a separating forward-looking note with the interpretation here that it's going to proceed with the rules of creation. Yemei takes us back to creation, and proceed is what's referenced by the shape of the note, which tells us that it's going to be different from before, and it's going to proceed from here on with the implications of Yemei. So we don't fully understand this, but we're going to move ahead from there nonetheless, and just say that that is a little bit of a cryptic reference that we may or may not understand in the future. Haaretz, the earth. So before, if you'll remember, the earth was part of what got corrupted in the flood, and in fact, what led to part of the destruction in the flood. And afterwards, the earth is no longer going to participate into that. It's going to be a stabilizing influence, hence the etnachta. Haaretz, the earth itself, and its functions will not be drawn into the kind of punishment as before, as shown by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So that we certainly understand from the way that we've been understanding the notes. Zera, pazer. Pazer is going to emphasize this word very strongly and perhaps give it some elevation. Similarly, the season for seeding will never change, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. So the time for seeding is going to stand alone, and it's going to be very important. It's going to be what is going to lead to the future. Vikatzir, Tlisha Gdola. Tlisha Gdola is a forward-looking note. It again emphasizes the word and looks forward to what's going to come after it. So harvesting is going to be a beginning of things that go on. And we'll remember the note Tlisha Gdola always goes at the beginning of the word and leads forward into the concept that it's going to tell us. Number 5, corresponding with the quality of seed and labor, the results will be comparable, and harvesting will not be bypassed, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So we're going to have zera, and that is going to still allow us to have katsir. We're not going to have the earth interrupting and being punished in the meantime. So zera is going to lead into katsir, which again is going to lead into vikor and kol, with a kadma followed by an azla in the next word. So this is going to emphasize the word and lead into what's going to go on. Similar natural occurrences.
What's the symbol above the zera? Above
Zera is a pazer. So a pazer looks like...
It's hard to see. Is that the U with the long...
Yes.
U.
That.
Yeah. Okay. So that's meaning.
So again, it's a strongly emphasize of the word, and continues on to lets the word stand alone, but doesn't disconnect it completely.
Also, if we look at the original classification of the notes, it says pazer is a high trumpet with an insignificant bass, capable to develop a minor event into a large ramification of striking proportions, and certainly seeding a field and having these marvelous crops grow fits that.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're saying here is hishtadlut. Your effort of planting is going to lead into things growing and becoming more. So So that's why it's something that grows and grows and grows. Vikor and cold, number 6. Similar natural occurrences and cold of its usual duration of the proper season in a given area will remain unchanged and be essentially within its usual limits, as suggested by the directional shape of the reading mark. The cold is going to lead into vachom and heat. The warm season and heat, which is characteristic for the particular term and territory, will be stable, as expressed by the corresponding closing shape of the directional reading mark. So these two, kadma v'azla, form a phrase that goes together. The cold is going to be balanced by the warm. They're going to be in the correct proportions for wherever you are, and they're not going to have changed from before. They're going to lead stability with the one balancing the other in the correct amount. So that's why the two are phrased together. The kites with the darga and summer. So too will also other periods, and summer will have typical features and not present any drastic changes, as represented by the shape of the reading mark. So darga leads us down and into the next word that's going to come after it. Vachoref and winter with the tevir. This is a stabilizing note that completes the phrase after the darga. So something is going to be sheltered there, which we normally see with the tevir. Likewise, and winter will preserve its significance and change periodically with the summer, as illustrated by the shape of the reading mark. So it's going to be the same as it was before, and hence we've got some protection, some preservation, and that's why we have a tevir there. And darga tevir connects those two words together. So again, they're going to balance each other in proper proportion.
You know, it's interesting because they always say, you know, everything was written for a reason. It's not an accident or a coincidence. How they have, it's not parallel. You've got cold and heat. I would have expected winter and summer. The phrase to the grammar to match it, but it doesn't. It goes cold and hot, hot and cold. The summer, winter. Cold usually refers to winter, and heat usually refers to summer, but it's been reversed. And there's obviously got to be a reason to that. I don't think that was just because that's how we threw it down on paper, on pyrus.
I have to think about it because again, then we have biyom balayla, we have day and night as well, that are going to continue there, which is, by the way, the opposite of the order in creation, vayera vayivoker, but yom balayla. So what we see is the influence of man going forward. The influence of man and civilization is a counter-natural force. Nature will not necessarily nature will follow its own rules, and man is going to have to intervene in order for man to survive and thrive. So Zera is going to have to increase and populate much more than it would have naturally. So you're going to have to seed more than the ground normally would have at that spot. So that's unnatural. The katsir, and you're going to cut it down even though it might have grown for a longer period of time. So you're going to do the unnatural thing. So what are you going to get? You're going to get core. You're going to get cold coming before warm. You're going to get a reversal of the pattern because again, man is going to have to survive through core. He's going to have to be able to thrive and get over environmental difficulties of cold more importantly than getting over warm. The kites, the choraf, again, the purpose is going to be that you're going to have to plan your life around doing things that don't go in the natural pattern necessarily. So you're going to have to build yourself both a shelter that's going to shield you from the sun, but also shield you from the cold, and therefore you can have your life in the day and your life at night, which is not the natural. You're going to go against nature in order to be able to survive. So we're seeing that the land is going to allow man to manipulate it to his purposes so that he can do things that don't follow the pattern and thrive by not following the pattern. Because if you leave things alone, they will tend not to be as productive as you need and as you want. Maybe?
Sounds good.
I'll buy it.
And day, number 10, the yom. Each period will be accurately defined, and a day will observe its beginnings and limitations at certain given season, as conveyed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So day and day is going to lead into Valayla and night, Mercha and Tipcha, and then it's going to be paused. Day and night are phrased together. And by the same rule, and the night will finalize one day and start another without any disturbances, as demonstrated by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So the two will flow together and will form a unit. Lo, not, Mercha. Number 12. Other phenomena on Earth like deserts, marshlands, etc. will also remain standard and not change their nature as depicted by the directional shape of the reading mark. And again, this is another thing that I want to point out, that you're not going to find this, that wasn't a pun, you're not going to find this type of definition of a single word in any other parish. You're not going to find lo yishbotu, that phrase, separated out into two separate things. But because lo has its own reading mark, it gets its own paragraph. So it's not lo yishbotu. It's not that they're not going to stop. Lo is telling us a different thing. It's telling us that other things aren't going to stop either. It's going to tell us about fields and swamps and so on and deserts, because lo has its own reading mark. So it's there to tell you its own story. And its own story is going to continue because it's a mercha, leading into something else. And then yishbotu, because it's got a sof pasuk, because it's got its own note, is going to stand by itself. So I don't know if you're hearing my fascination here or not. But normally you would read lo yishbotu, it's not going to stop. And not doesn't stand alone. Here what he's done with that paragraph number 12 is he told you, not is telling you its own story because it's got its own note. And again, that's something unique to this parish that you're just aren't going to see anywhere else. Yishbotu, they will be distorted, which is again an interesting definition of yishbotu, normally from Shabbat to stop, to rest. So we would say that they wouldn't have a rest, they wouldn't stop. But here he's defined it as to be distorted, and I'll have to think of the root word that he is deriving that from, because it's not immediately apparent, unless they will be distorted by the imagination of men. Irrigation canals naturally regularly will remain in effect. Natural regularity will remain in effect. So what he's taking from this word is that, again, it stands alone. It's not lo yishbotu. Lo means there's some things that won't change like they were before, natural areas. Yishbotu is telling us that man-made areas are going to be different from the way that they were before. So again, this is talking about man and his accomplishments, and the things that you build will have the ability to stand on their own right, and the things that are natural are still going to stay natural like they were before. So, lo, yishpotu, two separate words, two separate paragraphs. Things that are natural are going to stay natural. Things that are man-made are going to change from the natural pattern. So, just again, fascinating and unique to separate out lo yishpotu to give two completely different ideas there. And we have a remark in relation to the beginning of the next section. This sentence was also relayed to Noach as part of his blessing. After the flood, Noach was heartbroken and hesitant to start a new world, which might be found bad again and destroyed by an element mentioned in the sentence. He was afraid to promote new life or start a civilization only to cause new misery and eventual ruin. The assurance given to Noach in the sentence was a response to his problem, an assurance of the general order and subsequent processes of nature. So we perhaps see Noach as a tragic figure. After he emerges from the ark, one of the first things that he does is he plants a vineyard and he gets drunk. And certainly that can be understood in an emotional context. This is a person who had the ability to perhaps save and influence more and did not. And the question of how he rebuilds the world, we see throughout this translation that throughout the days of the flood, throughout going into the ark and so on, Noach needs constant reassurance about his worries and his anxieties and his fears, and that continues with the idea of the sentence. Noach needs to know that, number one, the earth is not going to be vindictive, and number two, the works of man can have some lasting effects of them. And that's why I think the reversal of the natural order here is because it's talking about things that are man-made that are going to have some ability to stand and to last, and that's why you get Yom V'Laila, not Laila V'Yom. And again, in direct connection to what we had said many, many times throughout going into the ark and throughout the story of the flood, Noach needs reassurance so that he can continue from his dilemma. So the pasuk is answering what Noach's fear was, what Noach's question was. We are chapter 9, verse 1. Let's just read the pasuk before we go on. So again, what I want you to note is that the word zera has strong influence and something that grows and grows and grows. The phrasing of kor v'chom together, kites v'chorf together, yom v'laila together, and then separating out from lo yishpotu, which is going to tell us two different things that are going to continue in harmony together with each other. Natural things staying natural and man-made things staying man-made. So let's hear it, let's try and hear it, and let's hear those elements in the notes themselves. Od kol yemei haaretz zera v'katzir v'kor v'chom v'kayitz v'choref v'yom v'layla lo yishpotu. We see the phrasing, we see how zera really builds and grows, and how kor v'chom balance each other, kites v'chorf balance each other, yom v'layla balance each other, and then lo yishpotu is the new reality that natural things can have their natural permanence and man-made things can have some of their own permanence as well. Chapter 9, verse 1, we are on page 69. With a munach, or a zakeh katan, this is a note that's going to separate itself out from things that have gone before and look forward to things that go ahead. And he blessed. When God pacified and assured Noach of future stability of the natural events of the earth, he encouraged him to be industrious, and he blessed him with personal success for a new start, as indicated by the shape of the related meaning. So this is a new start. It's going to be separated out from things that have gone on. Noach needed his reassurance, and therefore he's going to go on with God's blessing, Vayivarach Elokim, with a katon. So this is going to have a two-part meaning to it. God above. God above, the universe again viewed the condition on the earth as after creation, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So we're using the same Breshit bara Elokim, so we're using that name of God, and we're saying that God here, after the flood, is going to be in an equivalent role of supervision as Elokim at Breshit bara Elokim. So that's why we have the two-part note. It says, the same way God was then, this is the way God is going to be now. So it's referencing both by using Gzera Shava, we're using the same type of a word in different contexts to tell you that the two contexts are related, and we have that two-part shape to the note to tell you that, to emphasize that God the way he was there is God the way he's here. Et Noach, Tipcha, with Noach, number 3. He decided to begin a new world with Noach and mobilized his potentials for development as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Noach is going to focus back on the way that things were to see what he can create from here on in, but he's going to be looking backwards, Viet Banav, with the stabilizing Et Nachta under it, and with his sons, number 4. Noach himself would make efforts to revitalize the earth, and with his sons of all generations would be obliged to add their sweat and toil for further improvements, as shown by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So the things that his sons are going to do are going to lead to future achievements which have the potential to stay. Vayomer, Darga, and he said, although the hope of Noach's sons was dimmed by the memory of the flood, God kept stimulating their courage, and he said that a new start must take place in order to continue life and justify survival, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. So, Darga leads down and into the next word that's going to come after it. It tells us that something else is going to come after it with an emphasis. Pause tape for a second.